Hello everybody, welcome to another video. Today I'm not going to be talking about Galaxy of Heroes, but I do have a story for you. So start with the end. Good ending, positive ending, so I just want to throw that out there. I am a dad now, so my wife and I have a sweet baby girl. Per my wife's request, I'm going to withhold both their first names, just for privacy's sake. But yeah, we have her, and I made a video on the channel, I don't know, in the summer some point at some time, and I shared that we were expecting a baby in January. And of course, this video is in January, but our daughter was actually born at the end of October. So just some quick math for you. That is over 2 months early. She was about 2.5 months early. Gestationally, we had her at 28 weeks, 5 days. So it was a crazy time, incredibly scary for parents, especially first-time parents. Any of you that have had children and know that kind of countdown to 40 weeks is a due date, and that's 9 months. 28 weeks is more like 6.5 months. To start, it did take us kind of a while to get pregnant, but then we finally got pregnant. She finally got pregnant. And it was kind of a bumpy ride for a lot of it because the doctors gave us a false miscarriage scare. Like they told us a few weeks in, oh, get ready, this is gonna be a miscarriage, which was torture. And then we had to wait like 2 weeks to kind of finally get a true positive that there was no miscarriage, nothing was happening, and that was scary on its own. So right from the beginning, it was kind of bumpy to start. And as we progressed, or as my wife progressed into the second trimester, she started to look very, very puffy. And you expect women to, expand a bit when they're growing the baby, and especially towards the end. But she was looking a lot further along than she actually was, and we kind of dismissed it for a while. But just to be safe, we bought a blood pressure machine to just check at home, and we checked that periodically. And we went to a few classes we were going to different classes to prepare for the baby, and one of these nurses in one of the classes told us if her blood pressure got to a certain number, then we should go into the hospital to check it out. So it got to that number just before 20 weeks, so she was still at the very end of the second trimester, so not quite 2/3 of the way through. And when we went in, they did some tests, and my wife was diagnosed with preeclampsia, which is, I mean, I'm not an expert on it even now, but it's basically marked by like high blood pressure. And when you get diagnosed with, a lot of women, if they have it, they get it towards the end of the pregnancy, and it's not as big of a concern. But when you get diagnosed, the only way to cure it is to deliver the baby, because it's basically assaulting their placenta, and it's hurting the mom and the baby. So that was scary to be told the only way to treat this is to deliver the baby when she's 28 weeks old and not even 7 months. And so that was terrifying. So they didn't admit her to the hospital to stay there yet. They were like, okay, so we're getting pretty far along. We just want to take a look at it. We will not deliver this baby any day past 37 weeks. And we took that as, that was our goal. We want to get to 37 weeks, have this baby pretty close to full term. That's a pretty normal time frame. But just to be safe, they gave her a steroid shot, which really helps the baby's lungs develop fast in the case of an emergency delivery. So when they come out, they're stronger, they can breathe on their own. So we got to stay home. My wife didn't get admitted to the hospital that night, but we got to go home for 3 or 4 days or something. And, we kept checking the blood pressure. And my wife's having some really bad neck pain. Just couldn't sleep. It was just keeping her up. So we were checking the blood pressure, and then it got to the point where they told us these numbers. They said, okay, if it hits this, you got to come in. So it hit those numbers. And I'm like, okay. You watch me during my matches, and I'm worried about something bad happening. I'm like, I was like, okay, all right, we got to go. So I just, we had, our hospital bag or whatever we need to bring. I'm grabbing everything I need to come. I had a court date for a traffic ticket I got a few months before, so I was bringing my suit, and we just left. And we left Gus's home. We're like, we don't have any plans for him because my family doesn't live around, and neither of our families live around here. But we just pack up, go to the hospital. It's at night. My wife's kind of like, oh yeah, I hope they let us go home. And I knew the case. I was like, we are not going home after this. They're going to keep you in. I was terrified at the prospect of an early delivery at that point. It was 28 weeks, like 2 days or something. But when we get in there, they're treating her, making sure nothing bad happens to my wife or the baby, and then they tell us, okay, you're not gonna have this baby any day past 34 weeks, and um, their plan was to keep her in the hospital till 34 weeks. So like 6 weeks in the hospital, which is insane, and it would just have been so hard. But at the end of the day, we were still hoping that she'd be able to make it for the sake of the baby, because 34 weeks compared to 28 weeks is just, it's a world apart. It is so much more development for a baby. Um, it started the next few days in there. They were getting my wife's blood pressure under control, and it was starting to look good. We eased into it. I was staying in the hospital with her. And if anyone remembers, I mean, people that watch this channel all the time, there was a week back towards the end of October, early November. I didn't upload for a week, which is rare because I try to do it every day. I'm definitely not apologizing for not uploading or anything. But like, if you noticed, there was a week I didn't upload, and that this is what was happening. We were settling into it. The hospital food. My wife's parents came up for a week to help out, and once they knew there was a prospect that the baby would be delivered imminently, they came up and they were taking care of Gus, and we were just settling into it. And you're like, okay, maybe we can do this. So maybe we can hang in there for the long haul. And then one morning, it was such weird timing. The day I was supposed to go to traffic court for a ticket I had gotten, and I was dressed up in a suit. That morning, I was about to leave. We were about to eat breakfast, and I was going to head out and then come back. Everyone started rushing in the hospital room. They said, okay, your platelets are plummeting. Platelets are part of your blood, and that it's what helps you clot. So they were telling us, okay, it's below this number. If it gets even further down to this even lower number, you won't be able to clot, and the C-section will not go well. So we were just floored, like blown away, because her blood pressure was getting out of control, and we were thinking, okay, she's going to be fine to hang in there for a few more weeks. And my wife had like a few minutes to process that she was going to get a C-section. But given the platelets that they were so low, they had to put her under general anesthesia, and I wasn't allowed in there. So I wasn't in there for the delivery. So I was sitting back in this hospital room. They whisk her off. I'm trying to get in touch with my in-laws. It's funny. I'm trying to call them. They don't pick up. And then we have a camera on the outside of our house near the garage. And I opened that, and my father-in-law was like outside with Gus. And I was like, hey, you got to come to the hospital. I'm like, look at your phone, like speaking through the speaker. And that's how I got in touch with them to come. It's so funny. I wasn't laughing at that time. But I was just like, come on, get over here. What are you doing? And the hospital's 3 minutes away from our house. So it took a while. But yeah, they whisk her off. I'm just in the room by myself, and I'm like, well, this is rough. Hope they're fine. I didn't think there was any real chance anything bad would happen to my wife, but I was terrified about our daughter, the baby. So I was just packing up our stuff to try and take my mind off it, and just sitting there waiting, not letting myself think about all the prospects of everything. And then finally, I got word that she was done. So I finally get a hold, or they get a hold of me. The nurses and doctors say, she did great, your wife is fine, and the baby's doing great. She was crying and screaming and kicking, which is fantastic for a baby born that early. Like, the huge concern is that they're not breathing on their own, that they have to get rushed to get oxygen, that they're not moving a lot. But that was not the case with our baby. So she kicked a lot in the womb. She was very active in the womb, but she was ready for it. I was so scared. I mean, my wife was still basically unconscious from being out, so it was just me. They lead me down this hallway, and they're rolling the baby out of the delivery room, and I see her for the first time, and she's just so small. When they weighed her, she was under 2.5 pounds. That's a small baby. And her limbs were so skinny. I mean, that was so scary. And it's hard to talk about it even now. Like, immediately following it would be impossible to talk about, and it was pretty impossible to talk about. But so they rolled me into the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. So they NICU for short in the U.S. It's commonly what we call it. And it's weird. Going in there, to me at first it felt like just, I don't know, a halfway house to the morgue. That's where babies go when they're just on death's door. through the process of her being in there, I definitely don't see it like that anymore. They're very good people in there, very good nurses in this hospital and doctors. They're great with the babies. They know what they're doing, and they rarely ever have any kind of fatalities there. So, and and everyone, they couldn't tell me how well she was doing, because, and I understand this from a lawyer's perspective, because they don't want to get sued, so they can't just tell you, oh, she's doing great. But one of the nurses there was actually the mother-in-law of our friend, and she had told her friend, "Oh, that baby's, for a baby born that early, that's a perfect baby." So hearing that third hand, that's kind of a nice assurance. But yeah, she was doing so well for a baby that small and that young. Um, and they didn't need to put her on a ventilator. Like, she was breathing herself. They gave her breathing assistance, but they have to, put IVs in them. It's all kinds of stuff. I was kind of like catatonic, just scared out of my mind with it, and then waiting for my wife to come to and talking to her. But and it's kind of funny when my wife was coming to in the recovery room. She was just pretty out of it from everything they'd given her and just all the medication. And when I was standing close to her and trying to hold her hand and stuff, she was talking, and she couldn't talk too much, but she said, "It looks like you're mourning my death with your suit." So me and her parents got a good laugh at that. So she still kept her humor even at that time. So, and she was a lot tougher with it than me. I looked at our baby and was just so worried about her with how small she was and how early. But my wife didn't see her like that. She just saw her with a mother's love, just as a perfect little baby, and just knew she was going to be okay. And one of my new favorite memories of my wife is she went ahead of me with her nurse the night of our baby's birth, and was rolled in, and then I was coming in a little bit behind washing up, and I just could see her looking at her baby in her isolette, and she just had nothing but love and just looked so happy about this baby, and that was just such a warm feeling. Whereas I was over there, just really just freaking out about the whole thing. Our baby girl, she was fine, and it was a long road to get through that. So they have to do all kinds of stuff. They have to be able to breathe fully independently. They have to get up to full feedings through a bottle instead of through a tube. And in the meantime, you can't stay at the hospital. Like, I don't know about some hospitals would let you stay the whole time. You can't stay. We couldn't stay at the hospital, so we had to go home and come back. So after 3 days after, had to leave and come back, which is, I mean, it was hard enough for me, but it was just traumatizing for a mother. So it was just crazy. So there was a lot of tears shed by us during that time. But then we buckled down, got ready for it. And one thing for babies, they don't just need their basic needs. So they don't just need air, oxygen, and food and nutrition and have their diaper changed. They do need love. So what we were able to give her lots of love. My wife was basically lived there during the day. I'm me as well until I started back on work, and I started work sooner than she did, or she still hasn't yet. But so I wasn't able to be there all day. So my wife was there most of the day. They started letting us hold her pretty early on, like a week or so after, and I was terrified at first. Like, are you sure I can hold her? What made me feel better about her after a little bit, one of the nurses was trying to um, clean something on her or something. She asked me to hold her arms down for her. So I reached in. They have an isolette. It's kind of like an incubator. Reached in and tried to just put my hands over her arms and to hold my baby's arms. And she pushed, and she just was strong. She was pushing so hard. I was like, holy crap, how are you that strong? So after that, I really started to feel a lot better. And, it's just tons of ups and downs in a NICU. But we were in there over 2 months. So 2 months of every day going home and then going back to visit your baby. You can't bring her home, and that makes you stir crazy. And we knew it would come eventually, and then we finally brought her home right before New Year's. So that was kind of a goal of mine. Like, we wanted her home in 2024, and we did have her. So I'm making this video now, more than 3 weeks into the year, because things are going really well. So to me, she's like a normal baby. She was born at under 2.5 pounds. Now she's just about 7 pounds, and we just passed her due date, which is just completely normal. And I wouldn't know her from a normal baby that was born at full term. So you really can't tell that she's a premature baby at this point. They did scare us at one point in the NICU, saying that they thought she might have this rare disease that's basically a death sentence that the doctor said she had only seen it once in 40 years. So that was fun. And then they told us the test to confirm it would take 6 weeks. So that was a lot of fun. But we got the test back sooner. It was negative, so she didn't have it. But lots of ups and downs in that. And just wanted to share this story. I mean, with my wife's blessing too. This channel is important to me and all these viewers. I just wanted to share what's going on in my life. And in case you didn't notice, I've still been making videos almost each day. So I am able to balance it. So I feel good about that. Maybe I'll do a little bit less here and there, especially in the off weeks of GAC. But it's been quite a ride, and happy to be a father still at the end of it, and have our baby home with us, and have my wife. My wife, by the way, my wife's recovery was just so good. That was a huge worry for me on top of the baby from the beginning. Is she going to be okay? She's going to recover from preeclampsia, and HELLP syndrome is actually what she had to. Incredibly rare. Like 1 in 10,000 pregnancies have this. But I was worried about her recovering, but she recovered just like that from C-section, preeclampsia. But I mean, she went through the ringer. I mean, all that on top of normal postpartum, and you don't have your baby home with you, it's traumatizing. But here we are. And even though the physical recovery did go very well in a clinical sense, and she did recover, it was just incredibly hard for her to go through all that. But even during the whole process, this is amazing. Honestly, it shows how strong my wife is. She still is really wanting to more children in the future, even though this experience was kind of a nightmare experience in every sense of the word. But at the end of the tunnel, you have a sweet little baby. And my wife did better than I ever thought anyone could with this. Just very strong, and the amount of care she was able to give to our baby, even at the hospital, just blew me away. I tried to do what I could, but there's no substitute for a mother's love. So my wife just moved mountains in this process. And I really want to give thanks to God, the Lord, for this. We are praying in earnest every day for our baby during pregnancy, and then once it's happened, even more so. But I hope this is just, a great testimony that you can come out on the other side of something like this. I can't, if any of you end up having a baby prematurely, I can't promise everything will go as well. But just know that it can go very well. So just, be on top of it. Don't ignore any warning signs. Go to the hospital if something is concerning with the mother, because there are things they can do to help. If we didn't go in that early and get those shots, I don't know how our baby would be doing breathing right away, born that early. But yeah, I just wanted to share. So thanks, guys, for listening to whoever did. I really appreciate this community, and I'm glad I feel comfortable enough and my wife feels comfortable enough for me to share this with you guys. All right, well, that's it. Thanks so much. Happy to be a dad.